Today we're going to make a card using the Dandy Garden Suite in the mini catalog. This mini catalog is good until June of 2021. The Dandy Garden Suite is on page 24 and 25. We're going to use 4 elements from that suite: the Designer Series paper, the Mossy Meadow trim, the Ladybug Trinkets, and the Dragonfly Garden Bundle. So let's take a closer look at each of those items. So here is the Cling stamp set and the Dragonfly Punch that are part of the Dragonfly Garden Bundle. And those bundles are 10% off when you buy them as a bundle versus individually. Here is the Mossy Meadow trim and the Designer Series paper. This is a 6x6 paper. There's 48 pages, 48 pieces, so there's 4 each of 12 different double-sided designs. And the colors here are Blackberry Bliss, Bumblebee, Calypso Coral, Misty Moonlight, Mossy Meadow are the colors in there. So a nice variety of different colors and patterns there. So we'll use the Mossy Meadow ink pad, and then here are the Ladybug Trinkets that we'll be using, as well as the tailored tag from page 166 in the annual catalog. If you don't have the tailored tag, you could use a different type of geometric tag. So here is what we're going to be making today, a card similar to this. And so what you're going to need is a card base, the typical card base, so an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper cut in half, and then one of those halves folded to make your card base, a piece of the Designer Series paper, a piece of cardstock in a coordinating color, so one of those colors I mentioned, and all of this will be in the show notes so that you can see all the colors and the dimensions. And you'll also want a small piece of Whisper White paper as well. So I've got some of the images here that I have inked, so we're going to punch those out. The For a True Friend, I'm going to punch that a little bit offset. And set that aside. And then for the Dragonfly, now you notice that the Dragonfly is a double punch, so it'll punch out the big one and the small one at the same time. But today I only want the big one, so I'm just going to ignore the small one. I always punch my images upside down so I can see exactly where they line up so that I can line those up straight and then punch. So I'll set the smaller one aside and set the big one there for us to use. So I've also punched a whole bunch of the Designer Series paper out of with that tailored tag punch. So I have a whole bunch of different images here, and what we're going to do is lay those out in that geometric pattern here. And I really find that having the grid paper or something with lines, even lining up with the edge of your desk, can just really help you get the images where you want them on the paper. So for this one, I am going to lay these out and just get a bit of an idea of where I want them before I stick them down. Now, as you can see from my sample here, I'm not going to really worry about blank space. I'm not trying to cover every single little space with the Designer Series paper. I do want a little bit of that cardstock to show through. So I'm just going to lay out a couple different images here, get an idea of how I want those to go on the paper before I put them in place. And I will go ahead and walk through this so that you can see just how I'm laying them out on here. So I want to make sure that some of them go off the end a little bit. I could always decide, if I wanted to do this image, I could just glue it on, trim it off, and then flip it over and use the other side. But I think I'm going to do this. So I've got this lined up kind of how I want this. So I'm going to use the snail adhesive to start putting them in place. With the snail adhesive, it really is, you have to really kind of go up real tall and then flip your wrist upside down and it'll release that snail adhesive. I'm going to line this back up. It is not wanting to stay straight on there. So there we go. I'm going to get that first one in place and then I'm going to put the rest in place. And then remember, you're going to be trimming off the pieces that go off the edge of the cardstock. So you don't really need to go all the way to the end, like with this one, how it's, I know the majority of it is going to go off the edge, so I'm not really worried. And you can see, like with this, how I'm using the grid paper to make sure that I have it about the same distance, so that as I start to put all of these in, it's going to look pretty uniform. And I'm going to line them up using the ones above that are already stuck down. So that I have that pattern to go by. Now, if you look at my sample card, you can see that I did not fill the entire thing with the designer series paper like I'm doing with this one. And I'll show you why I'm doing that. Lots of different options on how you want to put your card together. So now that I've done that, I'm going to flip it over. And I'm just going to trim off all of that excess. And as you can see, lots of extra pieces that you could use on another card. And that's why you want to make sure you're not going all the way to the edge with the snail adhesive, because if you are, you're going to have adhesive on the top of it, like I did with that one. And so that one wouldn't be able to be flipped over and used on a different card. So you want to try to keep the snail adhesive kind of right on the pieces, the part of the piece that you're going to stick down. All right, so I'll clear all that extra out. So now I have the card front. As you can see, I do not have the, I did not leave a space for the greeting, but instead what I'm going to do is I'm going to just go right along the edge and just trim it down a little bit on all three of those edges there, because what I'm going to do with this one is just fit it right in to here instead of having it just so that it has a little bit of the green showing. Obviously, you can do that however you want that, but that's how I'm going to do this one. Line that right up there. And then flip it over. So just a slightly different look. You could also trim all the way around one, put it right in the middle. Lots of different ways that you could do that. So now I'm going to put together my card base, and I've decided to use this one for the card front. So, and as you can see, that's the other side of it. Stick that down. centered on the card base. And then this one is going to go down toward the bottom. So about 1/4 of an inch on each side. Whoops. All right, I made a mistake on this. What I needed to do is actually, because I have this little tag that's going to go in there, what I needed to do was just go around the outside, but instead I went along the whole thing. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to just layer a second one on here because I don't want to have to redo my, there we go. I don't want to have to redo the front of it because I've already done all of that. So I've just stuck that on there. It'll make the card just a tiny bit thicker, but instead I'm going along the outside edge on the left and right and the bottom, but not in the middle like I had done there. So there we go. Instead, now I just have it sticking on the 3 sides and the center is free. So this is where the small piece of Whisper White cardstock comes in. This is going to become our tag with the trim and the butterfly and the little ladybug, or the dragonfly and the little ladybug charm. So you can see that the end of the tag matches the shape of the tailored tag punch. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the tailored tag punch and I'm going to flip it over, and I have cut, so this distance between the top and the bottom point is just about exactly 1.5 inches. So I have cut this width to just shy of 1.5 inches, and this works with any type of punch like this where I can make the end of the tag whatever shape that punch is. So as you can see, what I did was I just put it part way in, fed that up in there, and then I'm going to get it to where it is lined up just along the edge before I punch. So this works with any kind of a tag punch that has a little bit wider area, and you just measure from here to here and then cut your paper just a tiny bit narrower, and then as you feed it through, you just put your hands in there and pull it up in the middle, and you can make the tag, the top of your tag, any shape that you would like it. So that's a nice way to help your tag match the rest of your card. So because I made sure there was no adhesive on the back of there now, that'll slide in and out. So here I have one that I've already punched a little hole in, and I'm going to take this trim and feed the trim through that. And I'll move it around this way so that it's facing the front. Trim my ends so that they are even. So for the ladybug charm, I'm going to use some of the liquid glue to stick that ladybug charm down. The charms for the ladybug are not flat. They have a bit of a hole in the middle, and it's a little bit too small of a hole to have a pop-up dot in. So I found just putting a good amount of the liquid glue in there, and it works pretty well. So I'm going to make sure I get a little bit on the edges. Kind of hard to see, kind of small there. But then there's plenty of liquid glue that it'll just stick that down without leaking out of the edge. There. So that's already stuck pretty good on there. And then I'm going to take the dragonfly that actually I'm going to use the different one. So you can see the two different images. One has a dark body, one has a light body, and the different style wings. So I'm going to pop his wings up there a little bit and just put a little bit of the liquid glue right down the body of the dragonfly. And then angle that on the tag. Now you could, one fun thing to do with this might be to put the dragonfly up a little higher and actually use some tape or glue to glue a gift card onto the tag so that when the recipient opens it and slides out the tag, there's a gift card in there. So we're gonna give him a minute to dry there outside. So then on the inside, the outside says for a true friend. So on the inside, I am going to put a couple of the other images. For a greeting on the inside of the card. And this one says, "May good things grow all year long." All right, that liquid glue dries pretty fast, so we should be good to tuck that down in there now. And there you go. And I actually have a third version here too, so you can see all the couple of different options for that card. So again, this is the Dandy Garden Suite, and all of the supplies and sizes will be in the show notes. So thanks so much for joining me.